Most accountants take the traditional path of going to get a 4-year college degree, a bachelor's in accounting. They do an internship while they're in college, and then they receive an offer, and straight out of college, they go straight into the Big Four or another very large public accounting firm. But me, my journey was anything but traditional, and honestly, I wouldn't change a thing about my journey. So today, I'm going to walk you through my career and salary progression over the years, starting at $32,000 as an account receivable clerk to making over 6 figures as a tax accountant. We're going to talk about the highs and lows of my career and the things that I've learned along the way. I go by a lot on this channel, and my channel is mostly about my personal finance journey to paying off debt, including my $87,000 of student loans that I racked up along the way of starting this career. A little bit of backstory about me is I grew up in a very rural town in North Carolina, and I was actually the first person in my family to graduate from high school. And I had no clue what I wanted to do at the age of 18. So fresh out of high school, I decided to go to college on the pre-med track. And shortly, about 2 years into that program, I realized that maybe pre-med wasn't for me. I didn't feel supported, or I didn't feel like I had the tools to achieve what I was trying to achieve. And I did work already while I was in school full-time at a grocery store as a store lead. And in that position, I did the closing of the store, doing bank drops, counting the cash drawers, doing money orders. So it was kind of already money related. And my manager at that grocery store had an associate's degree in accounting. So what does any impressionable teenager do? They go down the same path as someone who has inspired them. So I decided to enroll in a community college in accounting because I didn't want to waste more money going to a 4-year college after I decided I didn't want to do pre-med. And my very first accounting class that I took, I ended that class with 100. Like, I knocked it out of the park, and it felt like my thing. So from that moment on, I started researching more about the careers of accountants on YouTube. One of my idols at the time was Steffi Mills, who is, at the time, was an auditor, but now she works in internal audit. But yeah, I learned about accounting as an adult, and that's when I went on the journey to start my career in accounting. So I received my associates in accounting in 2017, and along the way I actually became a single mom, and that's important for my backstory for some of the jobs that I decided not to stay in very long. And I got my first job as an accounts receivable clerk, making $32,000 a year for a local government agency. And I stayed in that position for about 8 months. I actually was let go at the 8-month mark. And that job definitely had its cons. I was overwhelmed with the work, to be honest. And my supervisor told me, like, hey, this job is kind of like the role of 2 people, and someone retired during that year and I took on their work. So I was doing the work of about 2 people because we were understaffed. It is a government agency, and then someone retired, I took on their work too. I would be completely overwhelmed with all the accounts receivable journal entries, and I would receive the journal entries from all the different local agencies, from social services to the health department, and I would receive those journal entries for the entire month very last minute. And I would take work home in my laptop, and even though it wasn't required for me to do overtime, it was just a governmental agency, I would be entering in those journal entries at night while my daughter was asleep. So it was actually a ton of work, and I was only making $32,000 a year. But I also decided during that time that I really did like accounting and I wanted more for myself. So I decided to enroll in a bachelor's program that was mostly at night and online, and it was a private college. So The private college is attached with the high amount of student loans that I have, because private colleges do cost a lot more than your standard public college. So I went back and I got my bachelor's degree, and I then graduated in 2019 with my bachelor's of accounting. So since I had lost my job at the government agency while I was enrolled in my bachelor's degree program, I actually took inside sales job, and it's not really relevant to accounting, so we won't go into much detail, but that was the job that I had when I graduated. So it was a little bit hard for me to actually find a full-time position after I graduated. I didn't do any internships because I was already working full-time, and my decision making and not doing any accounting internships was primarily because I was a single mom and I had a child to take care of, so I needed to have a full-time job. Additionally, in that inside sales job, I was commuting from my very small hometown to the nearest metropolitan city, and that was an 1.5-hour drive, 5 days a week. And because of that, when I did actually apply for full-time jobs in accounting in that metropolitan city, it was kind of hard for me to get a job because I had a long commute, and employers kind of have a hard time justifying hiring someone that live a few cities over that has such a long commute, because they think, oh, she can't make it to work on time and all the things. So I did continue to put out applications, and about 6 months later, I finally landed a contract job, and I got that job through a contract agency, Robert Half, and I was making $19 an hour as an accounting specialist. That was my job title. And $19 an hour equates to about $39,500 on an annual basis. So with that contract job, I did not have any benefits. I didn't have paid time off. I also didn't get paid for holidays off. So when we be closed on holidays, I just didn't get paid. And it was supposed to be a contract to permanent job, but I got that job in 2020, and you guys know what happened in 2020. So obviously budgets were kind of put on pause for most companies. So because of the budgets being put on pause, I was supposed to go full-time after 3 months, but because they were put on pause due to what happened in 2020, I remained on contract. And as I said, I was a single mom, and I needed those benefits. I needed sick time. I needed paid time off. I needed health insurance. Like, those things were very important for me. So I had to go ahead and start back applying for new jobs. And also making only $39,000, although might be a great salary for some, I did feel like it was kind of grossly underpaid for someone who had a bachelor's degree. So I did re-enroll in an MBA program. So I decided to go get my master's while I was working that job. And because I was in a master's program, I was able to utilize student job fairs, and I did an online meet the firms through NABA. NABA is the National Association for Black Accountants, and during that meet the firms, I did talk to Big 4 firms and other large firms between number 5 and 25. And also at the same time, I had interviewed for another state position, since I did have state experience, and that job was a state auditor for the state of North Carolina. And I met with firms to get, interview for jobs that would be the year after, because it's kind of how firms do their hiring process. They hire for a year in advance, and also I was still in school, so they were expecting me to get my 150 hours of credit hours through schooling. That way I would be eligible to sit for the CPA exam, and that is typically a requirement for a lot of large public accounting firms, at least at the time. Things have changed a little bit since then. I went on to get an offer from the state auditor position of North Carolina, and I received an offer for a public accounting firm for the year after. And I received those offers on the same exact day. And I did something crazy and I accepted both jobs. So the breakdown on the salary for the North Carolina state auditor position was a salary of $58,000 a year. And then I received the offer for $63,000 a year as an incoming first year tax associate at a top 10 accounting firm. The caveat of the public accounting position was I had to move to the state of Texas, which was over 1,000 miles away from where I grew up, to take that job. So for a year, I worked as a state auditor making $58,000 a year, auditing public agencies in North Carolina like Department of Transportation, DSS, public colleges, and I learned a lot during that year, but it was not my thing. So after my year as a state auditor, I resigned and I packed up all my things and I moved 1,000 miles away to the great state of Texas, where I started my career in public accounting. So that was the year of 2021 that I started my first job in public accounting. And shortly after starting that job in October of 2021, I got my first cost of living raise at the beginning of 2022. So my salary then bumped up to $68,000. Then after completing my first year at that job, I ended up with a salary of $72,000. And over my 2-year span of working at that public accounting firm, I received a total in bonuses of $3,500. Also, I did want to go back and mention that when I got my offer of $63,000, I did receive an offer of a sign-on bonus of $1,500, but I was able to negotiate a little bit more for the sign-on bonus because I was moving. So literally, I called up the partner, and it was scary because talking to partners are just scary. And I asked, hey, I want to know, can I get more money for my sign-on bonus because I am moving over 1,000 miles away from home to take this job? And he agreed to bump up my sign-on bonus to $3,500, so an extra $2,000. And no, $2,000 does not cover the cost of moving across country, but I was going to take the job regardless, and the extra $2,000 helped make it happen. At the 2-year mark, that was when recruiters started to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And at the time, I was actually kind of wanting to move towards industry and out of public accounting. I did an interview for some industry roles, and I was interviewing for senior tax accountant roles because I was at the 2-year mark. But because I didn't already have that senior title, a lot of the industry jobs that I was interviewing for didn't feel like I was well qualified yet because I was not a senior yet. But I did have a recruiter reach out to me from a Big 4 firm, which is a total twist because I never thought I would ever work in Big 4. I interviewed for a position at a Big 4 firm, still in tax, of course, and I received an offer as a senior associate, and this was my biggest jump in salary, where I went from $72,000 as a second-year associate at a top 10 firm, and I got an offer of $103,000 as a senior tax associate at a Big 4 firm. I was excited because, like I said, I was the first person in my family to graduate high school. So making 6 figures was crazy for me. And if you think about it, I graduated with my bachelor's degree in 2019, and it was only 2003. So 4 years into my career outside of getting my bachelor's degree, I went from making $19 an hour on a contract basis to making 6 figures. And I was excited. So I accepted that job. I knew it would be a challenge for me because Big Four firms require more hours during their busy seasons. At my top 10 firm, our required minimum hours of overtime during busy season is 50 hours. And we have 2 busy seasons, which is January through April and then August to October 15th. And the minimum required of busy season hours at the Big Four is 55 hours. Now, I know you think, oh, that's only a 5-hour difference. Well, no, the minimum hours are 55 hours, and most of the time I work way more hours than 55 hours. I did my first year at the Big Four. Right after starting was the beginning of their fiscal year, so I did get a raise from 103 to 108, and then after my first year, I received a raise and I jumped from 108 to $118,005, and that was my salary as a second year senior tax associate. Then I did my second year at Big Four. During that time, I did have my last child, and I went on maternity leave for a part of the time during the middle of the first year and the second year. But I did complete a whole year after coming back from maternity leave. And during that year, my second year as a senior tax associate, I received a raise up to $124,000. So my first year as a senior associate, I made $118,000, and I did receive an annual bonus of $3,500. And in my second year as a senior tax associate, my salary was $124,000, and I received a bonus of $4,500, but it was prorated due to me being on maternity leave. So I think it ended up being about $42.75, and that, of course, that figure is before taxes. So what now? Now I have decided after 2.5 years at Big Four to move into industry. I actually started interviewing after busy season this year, so it's 2025. I started interviewing for jobs in May. I interviewed for probably maybe 8 different positions since May of 2025, and it is October, and I just received an offer for an industry position. You guys know that the employment market is a little crazy, so even as an employed person with excellent experience on my resume, it took me about 6 months to actually secure a position that worked for me. And I went to the final rounds for about 4 of those interviews that I did, and did not get those positions besides this very last one. So I'm very blessed, and now I am getting a jump between about $5,000 to $10,000 in salary, but it's honestly not about the salary for me anymore. I needed time back. Those busy seasons over the last 4 years have gotten to me for sure. Definitely feeling a bit of burnout over the last 4 years, and I will never get the time back that I missed with my kids and my infant this last year after coming back from maternity leave. So I truly believe that time is our biggest asset, and that is what I'm mainly looking forward to, going to an industry role, still in tax, just at a publicly traded company, working inside of their tax department. And my official title is going to be Associate Manager of Tax, and my niche is international tax. So if I would give you one piece of advice, if you are in tax, is to find your niche. There are niches that are a little bit more well paid than the other niches in tax. My niche is international tax, and I think that's where I might stay the rest of my career, but we'll see. But it's something that I really enjoy. I find it interesting. That is my salary and career journey as an accountant who started off a little bit later in life, not directly out of high school. So my career has definitely not been traditional. And if you're on your own journey, just know that life is not linear. Whether it's full of detours or bumps in the road, you can create your own successful career your way. So until next time, bye.